aim to connect a region of over 600 million bridges between our lands.
Good evening, I'm Alma Angeles, and you're watching ASEAN in Focus on tonight's headlines. Philippines is bracing for its worst drought in decades. With El Nino taking hold, moderate to severe drought conditions are expected across 77% of the country from February to May next year. This potential dry spell could rival the devastating 1997 to 1998 drought, the worst in the country's history. And government agencies are urged to act swiftly to ensure essential resources remain available. A war unlikely despite China's West Philippine Sea provocations. Despite recent Chinese aggression in the West Philippine Sea, experts believe a full-scale war remains improbable. China's calculated actions consider the economic and diplomatic repercussions of escalating tensions. China and Vietnam deepen ties in a bid to counter U.S. influence. China and Vietnam pledged closer ties during President Xi Jinping's first visit in 6 years. Both countries signed over 30 agreements, including a pledge to develop rail links. President Biden accuses Hamas of unfathomable sexual abuse. During a Hanukkah celebration, President Biden accused Hamas of sexually abusing women during attacks on Israelis, claiming to have photographic proof and characterizing it as beyond comprehension. The Philippines is facing a severe drought next year with moderate to severe drought conditions expected across 77% of the country from February to May 2024, according to the Science and Technology Department Secretary Renato Solidum.
Based on recent conditions, moderate to severe drought conditions are likely from February to May 2024. And by end of May, there would be 77% of the provinces of the country will have potential for drought. That would be around 65 provinces, and 7% potential for dry spell, or around 6 provinces.
This potential drought, a consequence of El Nino phenomenon, could rival the devastating dry spell of the 1997 to 98, the worst in the country's history.
A strong El Nino is present in the tropical Pacific, and this has further intensified, nearing its peak in the coming months, as the sea surface temperature anomalies have reached more than 1.5 degrees centigrade. Aside from that, majority of global climate models suggest that El Nino will likely persist until the second quarter of 2024.
El Nino has already begun in impacting certain regions, with up to 80% reduction in rainfall observed in some areas.
The effects of El Nino are currently felt, and they have been experienced in some areas in the country, and this is characterized by the reduction of rainfall up to 80%, which led to dry conditions or dry spells. Dry spells are episodes where there is 21 to 80% reduction of rainfall compared to the average normal months data. Below normal also would be the number of tropical cyclones in the previous months, and this has contributed to the persistence of dry conditions in some areas.
By May next year, Solidum predicts nearly all provinces will be experiencing drought conditions.
The plans are subdivided into 5 sectors: water security to ensure sufficient water supply, food security to make sure that there is stable supply of key food commodities, income losses are minimized, and access to affordable food would be expanded. On the energy security, power interruptions should be minimized. For health, outbreak of diseases and other illnesses would be managed and minimized. And for public safety, Fire incidents due to El Nino, especially for the dry grassier forested areas, would be reduced, and there will be safe, peaceful, and orderly communities that would be maintained all over the country.
With the potential for widespread water shortages, food scarcity, and electricity disruptions, Solidum urged government agencies to take immediate action.
So we need to plan ahead, and we should make it fast. As the evaluation changed from the previous one to a strong El Nino.
Temperatures are also predicted to soar.
And the maximum temperature in northern Luzon around April or May can be up to 41 degrees centigrade, and that would be the actual temperature. But if you add on the heat index, usually +5 to 15 degrees. Now, magkaiba kasi yung heat index, importante yun sa katawan ng tao. In Metro Manila, maybe around 38.3. And in lowland Luzon, up to 39.9, sorry. And Mindanao, by April, around 39.5.
The Department of Science and Technology has attributed the recent spate of earthquakes in Mindanao to the movement of long dormant trenches. Mindanao has been hit by several strong earthquakes this year, including a magnitude 7.4 quake in Surigao del Sur and a magnitude 6.8 earthquake in Soxargen.
Important thing, though, is we need to make sure that people understand that all the rest of the country, except Palawan Island, is transected by active faults and also bordered by what we call trenches. And the reason why we have several in Mindanao is because in Mindanao we have at least 3 to 4 trenches compared to Visayas and Luzon, no? And some of these trends, like the Philippine trends between Samar Island and Surigao provinces, have not really moved for a long time. So, kaya nandun yung mga gaps na may mga earthquake na nangyayari. Now, on the Sarangani event noong November 17, part ito ng Cotabato Trench, which is also very active in generating major earthquake events. So kaya nagkakataon na yung ibang lugar would have stored so much energy that need to be released. Kaya minsan may mga major earthquakes tayo.
The Philippine Institute of Volcanology and Seismology has also observed increased seismic activity in Davao de Oro, attributing it to active faults in the region. Solidum emphasized the need for a more intensive information campaign to promote public compliance with building codes, particularly in earthquake-prone areas like Mindanao. As of today, PHIVOLCS has recorded 14,820 earthquakes this year, exceeding the 14,317 recorded back in 2022.
What is important, though, is we need to continue strengthening the houses that we have constructed years before. Yung mga bago conforms to the building code, but we need to strengthen our building preparedness, and that is where the solution would lie on the potential number of casualty. Kailangang patibayan para kumonti pa ang maapektuhan.
In a phone call on Monday, the top military leaders of the Philippines and the U.S. pledged to strengthen their alliance in response to China's escalating aggression in the West Philippine Sea. Philippine Armed Forces Chief of Staff General Romeo Bronner Jr. and U.S. Joint Chiefs of Staff Chairman General Charles Brown Jr. discussed the worsening situation in the region, focusing on the recent incidents involving Chinese Coast Guard vessels targeting Philippine government ships. AFP spokesperson Colonel Cerces Trinidad said both generals agreed to maintain close coordination in the face of heightened illegal activities by the Chinese Coast Guard, including those targeting Philippine vessels, conducting routine patrols and resupply missions. The call came after a series of incidents over the weekend where Chinese Coast Guard ships and Chinese maritime militia vessels harassed and fired water cannons at Philippine vessels in Bao de Masinloc and Ayungin Shoal. These aggressive actions resulted in damage to at least 3 Philippine vessels. General Bronner and General Brown reaffirmed their commitment to the U.S.-Philippine Mutual Defense Treaty and upholding the rules-based international order in the Indo-Pacific region. They also discussed opportunities for further military cooperation. Despite recent aggressive actions by China in the West Philippine Sea, a maritime security expert believes a full-scale war between the two nations remains a remote possibility. Rear Admiral retired Rommel Jude Ong, a professor at the Ateneo School of Government, emphasized during a public briefing that China's behavior is carefully calculated, taking into account the economic and diplomatic disadvantages of escalating tensions.
Sa tingin ko hindi pa naman po. I think alam din naman ng kabila ng China na pag nag-escalate sila in such a way na it will lead to conflict, sila rin po ay agrabyado dun sa sitwasyon na yun. Tatamaan po sila economic-wise tsaka diplomatic-wise dun sa actions nila. So I think calibrated din yung action nila. So far, sa nakikita po natin, although napinsala po yung ating mga barko, it is still within bounds. Although medyo kailangan po talaga nating ayusin yung ating taktika doon sa dagat.
Ong praised President Marcos Jr.'s decision to internationalize the West Philippine Sea issue and raised awareness of China's actions.
Tama po yung direksyon ng posture ni President Marcos, yung ipahiwatig o paalam sa international community yung nangyayari dito sa South China Sea at sa West Philippine Sea. Kasi po ito yung isang estratehiya na maaaring mag-moderate ng behavior ng China. Kasi po, hindi lang naman po sa South China Sea ang engagement ng China. Meron ding ibang kalakaran na kailangan sila makipag-deal sa international community. So tama po ito na in a way internationalize natin yung issue as a way of moderating yung behavior ng China.
Regarding proposals to recall ambassadors from both countries, Ong urged caution.
Ang tanong po dito is, makakasolve ba ito sa problema natin or makakatulong ba ito in terms of addressing yung issues natin with China? Kung oo, then sige, maaari siguro gawin natin. Pero kung sa tingin natin sa ating deliberation ay hindi naman siya makakatulong, I think medyo dapat pag-isipan pa yung ganung action po.
Armed Forces of the Philippines Chief of Staff General Romeo Bronner Jr. firmly rejected the Chinese Coast Guard's claim that Philippine vessels were responsible for the Ayungin Shoal collision. Bronner, who witnessed the incident firsthand while on board a civilian boat, confirmed the Chinese Coast Guard's harassment tactics, including dangerous maneuvers and water cannon attacks.
So, yung ating Chief of Staff, umiikot po yan sa lahat ng kampo o stasyon ng militar. So maganda po internally na messaging yan na siya ay nakikiramay po sa ating mga mandaragat na nandun po nakastasyon sa Sierra Madre para magbantay ng Ayungin Shoal. Maganda rin pong experience yung natanggap niya dahil nakita niya po yung sitwasyon on the ground or at sea dito po sa ating dagat sa nakapaligid sa Ayungin Shoal.
Itong ginagawa ngayon sa atin sa West Philippine Sea ay parte ng isang elaborate at isang pangmatagalang strategiya ng China upang manaig ang kanilang tinatawag na narrative sa West Philippine Sea. Kung titingnan natin yung ginagawa sa atin, ito ay parte ng tinatawag na gray zone tactics ng China upang ipakita sa atin na willing kaming i-enforce ang aming paniniwalaan at ito ang gagawin namin sa inyo. I-water cannon namin kayo, i-laser pointing namin kayo. The background, ginagamit nila yung tinatawag na United Front, yung iba-ibang ahensya ng kanilang gobyerno at even yung kanilang private sector upang itulak yung tinatawag na narrative na pro-Beijing narrative, yung para ma-dominate nila yung istorya na nangyayari sa West Philippine Sea. Kaya makikita ninyo very aggressive yung pagpupush nila, hindi ba? Makikita ninyo na tayo ang sinisisi meron pang kaming nakikita na bakit daw ang Pilipinas nakikialam diyan sa teritoryong 'yan, kanila naman daw 'yan teritoryong 'yan, ano? Kumbaga pag-aari daw ng China 'yan. Binabaliktad nila yung binabaliktad nila yung istorya.
In an effort to overthrow Hamas, Israel is moving up with its ground offensive in Gaza today and is reportedly pumping seawater into the vast network of tunnels that Hamas has dug beneath the city, according to the Wall Street Journal tonight. U.S. President Joe Biden declined to directly answer the question on reports that Israel was pumping seawater into Hamas Gaza tunnel complex.
With regard to the flooding of the tunnels, I'm not there is assertions being made that there's quite sure there are no hostages in any of these tunnels, but I don't know that for a fact.
Meanwhile, speaking at a fundraiser today, President Biden stated that Israel had the support of most of the world following the Hamas attacks, but they're starting to lose that support by the indiscriminate bombing that takes place. Biden went on to say that Netanyahu needs to change. Israel's military campaign is currently causing tensions with the White House. He referred to it as the most conservative government in Israel's history and stated they don't want a two-state solution. However, Prime Minister Netanyahu is rejecting it, stating that he would not permit those who finance and educate terrorism to enter Gaza. President Biden sounded similar warnings about Israel losing global support during a ceremony at the White House on Monday to mark the Jewish holiday of Hanukkah.
Tough spot. We continue to provide military assistance to Israel until they get rid of Hamas. But we have to be careful. They have to be careful. The whole world's public opinion can shift overnight. We can't let that happen.
Meanwhile, the UN General Assembly overwhelmingly passed a non-binding resolution demanding a ceasefire in Gaza, taking the lead from the paralyzed Security Council. The body, which includes all 193 UN member nations, voted 153 in favor of the resolution, exceeding the 140 or so countries that have routinely backed resolutions condemning Russia for its invasion of Ukraine. 10 countries, including the U.S. and Israel, vetoed against, while 23 abstained.
So the fact of the matter is, quite simply, the violence must stop. It must. I therefore once again add my voice to the demand for an immediate humanitarian ceasefire.
We support speaking out with one voice to condemn Hamas for its terrorist actions on October 7th. Why is that so hard? To say unequivocally that murdering babies and gunning down parents in front of their children is horrific, that burning down houses while families shelter inside and taking civilians hostage is abhorrent.
By voting in favor of this resolution, you are supporting the survival of jihadist terror and the continued suffering of people of Gaza. The exploitation of the Palestinians has made the UN a moral stain on humanity. Why are you continuing to allow them to make the United Nations irrelevant? If this body's intentions are just, why don't you just start by demanding a ceasefire only from those responsible for violating the past too? Why don't you hold the rapists and child murderers accountable? No piece of paper, especially one that is adopted by a biased, politicized majority, will prevent Israel from defending itself against those that seek our destruction. Israel is fighting a war for her future. There is not a single member state here, not a single member state here that would act differently in a similar situation.
This draft resolution demands an immediate humanitarian ceasefire. Let me repeat, demands. The language of demands, it has the power of implementation. It does not call for or urges, it demands. And we will not rest until we see compliance of Israel with this demand from the General Assembly.
In other news tonight, China and Vietnam pledged to deepen their relationship during President Xi's visit to the country in 6 years. This move comes amidst growing U.S. influence in the region and China's efforts to counter it. President Xi met with Nguyen Phu Trong, the leader of Vietnam's ruling Communist Party, on the first day of his trip. This follows U.S. President Joe Biden's visit to Hanoi in September, which aimed to strengthen U.S.-Vietnam ties and contain China's rising power. Both countries issued a joint statement expressing their commitment to deepening and increasing bilateral relations. They further agreed to build a community with a shared future and described Xi's visit as a historic landmark, contributing to regional and global peace, stability, and development. China and Vietnam signed over 30 agreements, including a pledge to develop rail links between the two nations. Despite Vietnam's concerns about China's assertiveness in the South China Sea, it maintains close economic ties with its neighbor. While Vietnam and China, both ruled by communist parties, already share a comprehensive strategic partnership, their relationship with the U.S. has also strengthened. In September, both countries elevated their relationship to the same level. Analysts believe Xi might push Vietnam to join his community of common destiny, a vision of future cooperation on various issues. While Vietnam expressed support, it did not use the specific term in the joint statement. In an article published in Vietnam's Nan Dan newspaper, President Xi stated that Asia's future is in the hands of no one but Asians. This remark highlights China's desire for regional leadership and its potential competition with the U.S. and Southeast Asia. Finally, in our news, get ready to fall in love all over again with the heartwarming story of Monday first screening, now streaming on Netflix. This charming film tells the story of two older individuals played by veteran award-winning actors Gina Alahar and Ricky Davao, who find an unexpected connection through a shared love of cinema, set against the backdrop of the unique Movie Monday tradition observed in some Metro Manila malls, where free movie screenings are held for senior citizens. The film unfolds a tender romance that blossoms amidst the silver screen.
Si Lydia, bago nating miyembro.
Paano ba manligaw ngayon, ha?
Kunin mo na yung cellphone number. Text mo na.
Following its successful theatrical release in 100 cinemas nationwide on August 30, distributed by Regal Entertainment under Net25 Films banner, Monday first screening is now available for audiences worldwide to enjoy on Netflix. So grab your favorite snacks, cuddle up on your couch, and get ready to be transported to a world of laughter, love, and heartwarming moments with Monday screening. This film is a must-watch for anyone who believes that love can bloom at any age.
May mga bagay na dapat mong paghirapan bago mo makuha.
As my usual habit, I'd like to end the day on a positive note. Let's encourage and build each other up so that no one is left behind. And that's it for tonight's broadcast. I'm Alma Angeles. Stay in the news because we live in extraordinary times. Good night.